Let's begin by saying that one of the big problems the spiritual seeker faces is the process of actually allowing a person time and space to focus on deepening their inner life. In our ultra-materialistic and action-oriented society, searching for spirituality is not considered particularly important. The problem is that we all live in a world where it is primarily outer realities that count, not inner ones, and where nothing is permitted to exist if you can't see, touch, taste, smell, or hear it. As such, everything that exists outside the domain of what we consider normal, which includes many spiritual experiences, still gets labeled with the negative epithet of abnormal. This means that truly holy and saintly people, like Ramana Maharshi, Mother Meera, or Papa G, can get put in the same bracket as someone who is psychotic. Therefore, being on a spiritual path is analogous to licking honey off a razor's edge. Perhaps this analogy doesn't apply so much to the start of our journey, where the aim is not yet to move beyond our ego identifications, but more to use spirituality to make our ego selves feel more secure. This is important, for we don't evolve into higher states by trying to diss the ego or pretend we can transcend them, but rather by working to help our personality self to become healthier. Indeed, to reach a place where our egos are willing to step aside and stop trying to run the show, and thus allow space for a higher or more evolved part of ourselves to enter and take greater charge of our lives. They first need to feel secure and healthy. As Ram Dass put it, we first have to become a somebody before we can become a nobody. This is why the process of working to heal our emotional wounds is such an integral part of the sacred journey, and why psychotherapy is so important. I do not go along with many Eastern teachers who tell us that ego is bad and the aim is to become totally egoless. A healthy ego has much to offer us, and we need to find a place where we can befriend this part of ourselves so it becomes content in the role of being subservient and is happy to not stand in our way. So, my dear friend, as you start out on a spiritual path, the first is that you need to choose to commit to your evolutionary development. The second is that you don't try to avoid working through your inner blockages, wherever and however they manifest. Thirdly, you need to address the issue of healing and integrating the many different parts of your personalities, some of which may be at odds with each other. And lastly, you need to acknowledge and work at gradually releasing all those anachronistic beliefs, values, and worldviews which you are still attached to, and which conspire to keep you hunkered down in your old world mindsets. Here are a few guidelines to help us as we start out on our journey. It is good to have help, particularly at the start, so always gravitate towards a teacher, guide, psychotherapist, or a teaching that you feel drawn to and feel good about. Best if you can find someone whom you sense is a bit further along the path than you are, but not too far. If they are too evolved, their teachings may be too advanced for you to benefit. Also, do not work with someone of the old school who denies the validity of altered states of consciousness. And don't worry if you hit a few brick walls. Often, we learn what we need by first discovering what we don't. Beware of shysters or false prophets. There are plenty around. Because the starting off seeker is vulnerable, we can be potentially open to being conned. There are three main areas I want to warn you about. Beware being sucked in by a fundamentalist cult. Many intelligent and well-meaning people have fallen for the very successful conversion tactics that cults use. Beware cowboy therapists or so-called life coaches who are untrained and can unwittingly lead you into deep water and not save you from drowning. Beware manipulative so-called gurus who may talk a good talk but don't walk it. Know that the more you pray for grace and ask grace to be increasingly present in your life, the more it will be. So talk to it, connect to it in as many ways as you can. Imagine yourself reaching up to higher states of consciousness and make it your daily practice to treat your fellow human beings with kindness, graciousness, and respect at all times. Know that the more you share grace, the more you will draw it to live inside you. Here, discipline is needed. We need to do the work, even when we don't feel like it. Don't worry about mixing things up. All genuine paths to God come from the same ground of being. For example, there is much we can learn from the Buddha's middle way about how we might live more harmoniously and peacefully, while shamanism teaches us to open up more and more to the spirit of the earth. I see no conflict. Know that there is appropriate suffering, which we often don't do enough of, and neurotic suffering, which we tend to engage in too freely. Appropriate suffering has a spiritual aim. We experience it when undergoing a purification or a burning through of old patterns inside ourselves. It is very different from neurotic suffering, much of which is avoidable and comes from having an insecure ego and not living the right way. Don't worry if you think you are not making significant progress and find yourself slipping backwards a lot. Lao Tzu told us that going on is going back, and it is true. Each new step forward requires us to return and revisit our past, so we don't leave it behind or reflect it, but rather discover how to bring it up along with us. I recommend that from time to time you go on a spiritual retreat, whereby you remove yourself for at least a week from your everyday existence. What this does is give you time and space to focus only on your inner life. Don't forget that being spiritual is all about our capacity to become more fully human, so try as much as possible to seek out and spend time with people who are already more fully human, so you can move into their slipstream. Ramakrishna said, "Seek spiritual advancement from one who has advanced. Take trouble to live in the society of the good." It is also important that you find work that feels both appropriate and enables your creativity to flow, and in some way makes a positive difference in the world. We can serve the evolution of life on Earth in so many different ways, and the more effectively we manage to do so, the more our inner life will expand and flourish. If you would like to learn more about one man's struggles to discover his own soul in a soulless world, and how that may help you in your own journey, then please take a look at our book, Amazing Grace, Memoirs of a Transformational Journey by Serge Beddington Behrens, who also provided the words for this video. It's available from O-Books and wherever books are sold. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for future content, and we'll see you next time.